All right, great. All right, welcome everyone. I'm Rabbi Stephen Moskowitz of Congregation Lador of Vador. We're very excited and pleased that Rabbi Abadie is joining us to share with us his experiences and living in the UAE and the Gulf states. I'm going to allow Judy Hirshon to introduce him formally, but I want to especially acknowledge Rabbi Huberman and Congregation Tifereth Israel and our friends from nearby who are helping to sponsor this event. And so we're grateful for your participation. Judy Hirshon is going to introduce Rabbi Abadie. He's going to talk for about 15 minutes or so and offer us an introduction, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers, of course.
Thank you, Rabbi Moskowitz, and I want to thank Judith Hirshon.
Well, I'm going to give an introduction first.
Oh, you have an introduction? Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead.
So thank you, Rabbi Moskowitz, and thank you, Rabbi Huberman of Congregation Tifereth Israel, for your co-sponsorship. On behalf of the Enrichment Committee of Lador Vador, it's a great pleasure to welcome everyone who's joined us today. 2 years ago, I had the honor of introducing Rabbi Dr. Elie Abadie, speaking live from Dubai, on the topic of Israel from independence to the Abraham Accords. And by way of background, I had explained in late fall of 2019 and early 2020, I had been fortunate enough to attend a series of luncheons in New York City organized by a mutual friend who is with us today, Rebecca Hariri. So that's a great treat seeing Rebecca. And she did invited a small group, including Rabbi Abadie. At these lunches, Rabbi Abadie had described events unfolding in the UAE, which in the early winter of 2020 seemed quite surreal. Frustratingly, the pandemic ended these meetings. However, by the following August, the Abraham Accords had been signed with the UAE. And that November, Rabbi Abadie had left for Dubai to become senior rabbi of the UAE Jewish community, head of the Association of the Gulf Jewish Communities created by the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. And I hope I have that correct, Rabbi Abadie. So in a recent JNS article titled Tightening the Noose Around Israel, Middle East research analyst Dr. Eric Mandel quoted senior fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council, Larry Haas, who 1 year ago describing the Middle East as becoming a bifurcated region with Israel and its growing Sunni Arab allies on one side and Iran and its terror group allies on the other. However, Dr. Mandel states, now that seems like ancient history. And he writes, today, Iran is restoring and improving diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Jordan. Syria, the pariah of the Arab League for its genocide against Sunni Arabs, is now being welcomed back into the fold. Last week, the foreign ministers of the UAE and Iran, quote, agreed to enhance cooperation. Just a short time ago, the UAE was solidly in the anti-Iran regional axis. And Dr. Mandel asks, in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the most recent survey shows only around 20% of each public says Abraham Accords will have a positive effect on the region. When first announced, it was 40%. What does the strengthening of ties with Iran portend for those countries supporting the Accords with its language of peace and cooperation, including, quote, in this spirit, we warmly welcome and encouraged by the progress already made in establishing diplomatic relations between Israel and its neighbors in the region under the principles of the Abraham Accords. We are encouraged by the ongoing efforts to consolidate and expand such friendly relations based on shared interests and a shared commitment to a better future. So it's with enormous gratitude I once again welcome Beirut-born Rabbi Dr. Abadie, both physician and rabbi, whose life story and unique talents have positioned him to become not only a great religious leader, but a diplomat extraordinaire. So we're so eager to hear what you have to say, Rabbi.
Thank you again. Thank you, Judith, for such a beautiful introduction and for facilitating this. And thank you, Dr. Moskowitz, for hosting it and leading it. Yes, it has been, I would say, almost 2 years since we met last time, and a tremendous amount of change has occurred, not just in the UAE, but in that entire region, vis-a-vis the Jewish community and also vis-a-vis Israel. As we are being recorded, we have to watch what we say. You know, joke aside, let me just brief you on what happened during this past 2 years. So first and foremost, the Jewish community maybe multiplied by 5 now. When I arrived, there was less than 200 people. Now I think we are reaching 1,000 that we know of. Now, the government tells me that there might be a few other thousands that we don't know of, or at least they're not involved in Jewish communal life. But those 1,000, they are now involved in Jewish communal life. That's 5 times what we had 2 years ago. There are several places of worship, given that the city is a very large and a big city. And there is no real Jewish community in a sense, a Jewish neighborhood. Jews live anywhere and everywhere in the city itself. And so that requires local places of worship, not really synagogues, but places of prayers and worship. We are the only place that we have what's called a villa that was made into a synagogue. But that is the distance and the amount of Jews necessitate several places of worship. Now, of course, when I started, there was no kosher restaurants at all. Now we have 6 to 7 kosher restaurants, from meat to dairy to parav, as they say, non-meat and non-dairy, to Italian specialties, to fusion specialties. They range also from very, very chic, most expensive, to the least expensive. There have been Pesach programs, Sukkot programs all over the city throughout these past 2 years. I would say Jewish tourism estimated to have reached maybe 1 million in the last 2 years. Just Israelis alone, it is believed to be like 700,000. And so with Jews from all around the world, I would estimate to be around 1 million Jewish visitors in the last 2.5 years. When it comes now to academics, I have spoken at many universities there. I have spoken at the Great Mosque of Abu Dhabi. For those of you who have visited it, you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who are going to visit, I'm sure you will visit the Great Mosque of Abu Dhabi, the Sheikh Zayed Mosque, named after the founding father of the country, the visionary of the country. It's a beautiful, one-of-its-kind mosque. I was invited to speak. Actually, it was on what's called the Humanitarian Day, but it is the day in which Sheikh Zayed passed away. It's his anniversary. I was, of course, the only rabbi that spoke there, representing the Jewish community and the Jewish faith, to 1,000 guests, ranging from ministers to imams to diplomats to regular people. So there have been a lot of these academic exchanges, lectures and speakers, so we could get to know each other. And indeed, we have had a lot of these educational and academic exchanges. Just last week, there was a conference that is directed and led by Yeshiva University and the Mohammed bin Zayed University in Dubai, at the famous Crossroads of Civilizations Museum that is led by my very, very dear friend Ahmed Obaid al-Mansouri, who is now very well known. And his museum is the first and so far the only permanent exhibit on the Holocaust in an Arab country. He has facilitated many Yom HaShoah commemorations, many Holocaust Memorial Day, International Holocaust Memorial Day in there, and he has that permanent exhibit. He has been awarded to speak at the March of the Living already twice this year and also last year. He's a very, very dear friend who has really facilitated this exchange and this cooperation between the Jewish community and the local Emirati community. Now, when it comes to the Abraham Accords, again, I'm not a politician, and this is my disclaimer. It is more of what I see and what I read and what I hear, and that is certainly the Abraham Accords are bearing fruits, and many of them we may not see with the naked eyes, especially of what we see happening around that area politically. However, those accords are very strong and they're continuing. Just to mention about the economic exchange between Israel and the UAE, from what I understand, is already over $1.5 billion annual exchange of economics. Definitely in the strategic part there is, in the academic also there is. There are now several universities from Israel trying to co-sponsor lectures with universities in the UAE, and of course the tourism back and forth. There was a time in which 7 flights, round-trip flights, occurred daily between Tel Aviv and Dubai. Now is around 4 flights a day daily, including El Al, Emirates Airlines, Etihad Airlines, and Isra Air, and Fly Dubai. So at times, really, those flights, you go even more to 10 flights a day. So that exchange continues to take place. We have had President Yitzhak Herzog visited already twice. The Emirates, we welcomed him there when he came. Several ministers have visited, and of course the inauguration of the embassy took place a year and a half ago. They just also celebrated this past week, actually 3 days ago on Thursday, the Israel Independence Day by the Israeli embassy, together with Emirati guests, in which an Emirati and an Israeli sang both national anthems of the UAE and also Hatikva of Israel. So the strength of the Abraham Accords is continuing. It's no way to go back. The officials from the country say this is a one-way, so to speak, track that is forward. Nothing is going to go back. Now, you may ask me, like I said, I'm not a politician, but what's happening with the political situation around? Well, look, countries need to see what's mutual interest, and at the same time, there might be certain interest that countries, even though they might be very, very good friends, they have separate interests than the country, even between the United States and Israel. We know, as they are allies and have been strong allies for many years, they share values and they share principles and they share visions and views of the world. However, we know very well that the United States sometimes has certain policies that Israel doesn't agree with, and vice versa. Israel has certain policies that the US doesn't agree with. And that's because each country at the end, they need to see what's important to them, without, of course, breaking that friendship and that close relationship with the other country. The same thing in the Gulf, I see, with the UAE or Saudi Arabia. However, there's something that my opinion is that in that region, from what I feel and what I hear, they feel a bit abandoned by the United States. And I think that's what may have driven them to seek support and allies from other countries that might be able to bolster their security in that sense. And I think that may have driven some of those agreements that we have been hearing in the last 2 months or so. And I guess the United States need to be a little bit more involved, more able to hear the needs, the strategic needs of that region, so they could really have influence and have the ability to work together. And I think that's what has been happening lately. Other than that, as I said, I see the Abraham Accords just flourishing, continuing to flourish, and more and more exchange of either economy, business, technology, the amount of cyber technology and computer technology and AI is significant between Israel and the UAE. That will definitely continue, and other areas also of mutual interest that will certainly continue. Probably, I guess I could stop here, and then if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
Yeah, we'd love to take some questions. I'm going to start off with a question. Just a very practical. I'm fascinated by how many Israelis are visiting, and I want to know if, first of all, what's the attraction? Is it just because they couldn't go before, and that's the attraction to go there? And is there an equal number of Emiratis going to Israel? I mean, can you maybe do you have some numbers, or you can add some more color and flavor to that?
Right. So I think the reasons haven't changed from the last 2 years until now, and that is reason, I would say, number one is tourism. Israelis are very, very always interested to go somewhere else to tour. Turkey was the biggest destination for Israelis. Now this is becoming Dubai. Of course, there is curiosity. There is the amazing what they hear and what they see, and they want to see it with their own eyes. And of course, the idea that they're able to go visit an Arab country that has basically normalized with Israel, that is clearly very, very enticing. So population number one of Israelis is tourism. The second type of population of Israelis are those people who want to open up a business in the region. First, because specifically in the UAE, because it's very business friendly, the UAE. There are no taxes, there are no income tax. They will institute next year a corporate tax, but based on profits. I think the percentage is around 8 or 9%. Which is, very, very low compared to many industrialized countries. So business environment is very propitious for Israelis. And Israelis, as you know, are entrepreneurs. They're forward thinking. They always want to start something new somewhere else. And so that has attracted that type of population to the UAE to open up businesses, but maybe not live there, to open up a business, open up a headquarters, and then basically commute, travel. Some of them really commute every Sunday and Friday, and some of them may come 2-3 weeks and then go back to Israel and then return in a month or two to watch over their business. Of course, they have people working for them there. Population number 3 of Israelis is those that have decided to already settle in the UAE because of the business they have opened, and some of them because of the quality of life. Believe it or not, I think Dubai, the UAE in general, is one of the safest countries in the world when it comes to crime, when it comes to anti-Semitic attacks. And so a Jew can live safely and secure in that area. As I mentioned 2 years ago, I continue to mention it. I walk down the street with my kippah on at any time, anywhere in the city without any fear of any attack. I don't have to look behind me to see who is walking behind me, who's following me. I know there is no issue there. And so many Israelis have kind of chosen to come and live there because of that safety, security, business environment. And now that there is a Jewish community with kosher food, with prayer services, with community life, then that for them is kind of a no-brainer, so to speak. And so therefore we have that type of a population, and not just from Israel. We have also from France and from England. There is a growing North African French community, Jewish community. Many Jews that their ancestry came from either Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, are now from France, are moving to Dubai to establish their businesses and the community. Now, we count probably over 50 to 60 families from that area. Also, the same North African Jewish community from England, London, that they are also moving to Dubai and to the Emirates because of that same reason. And so, of course, we have some from Hong Kong, we have from Switzerland, we have from the United States, from all over the world. Wherever there is a Jewish community, I could say we have at least one representative in the Emirates. But that's what makes up the population of the Jewish community. Now, there was a huge influx, and it continues to occur, from Russian Jews and Ukrainian Jews. Russian Jews have moved now to the Emirates, again because of the war and because they're safeguarding their possessions and their wealth, and they have transferred their money there to do business and to live there, given that it's a safe and secure country and its business environment is very good. The same thing, Ukrainian Jews have moved there, and also non-Jews have been moving now to the Emirates because of the same reasons. So the community is really growing significantly.
And the second half of the question, are there as many Emiratis going to Israel and visiting Israel?
The second half, there are Emiratis going to Israel, not with the same number. Just don't forget that there are only 1.5 million Emiratis in the Emirates. Out of a 10 million population, 8.5 are what's known as expats or foreigners that reside there, only 1.5 million Emiratis. So from what I know, there have been maybe 3,000 to 4,000 Emiratis that have already visited Israel. So percentage-wise, I think it's maybe not exactly the same as Israelis coming, but at least at the beginning, the problem was there were many Emiratis that have asked me to go with them and lead them into Israel. Israel had their country pretty much closed for 1.5 years. And so at the beginning, when there was such enthusiasm to go and visit, they couldn't do it. And so, of course, that enthusiasm diminished significantly. But there are a lot of Emiratis that are traveling for tourism, and many of them are traveling because of also business opportunities in Israel.
Rabbi Huberman.
So just for about 15, 20 years, I've been having an email conversation with somebody that lives in the UAE. When we began, she had all of these misconceptions about Israel and its militaristic characteristics, etc. And lately, I'm noticing a loosening up. It's been a dialogue that we've had for many, many years. When we've had speakers that have spoken to us who are ex-residents of Egypt or other countries who are now friends of Israel, they talk a lot about how the rank and file, the people on the streets, have they've been indoctrinated over many, many years to have a negative. I remember listening to somebody from Egypt that said if there's a power failure, it's the Israelis' fault. It's I know that you're walking the streets, you feel very safe, and the relations with the government is very positive. Tourism, business. When you walk the streets or sit in a cafe and just have a conversation with somebody on the streets, what is the overall attitude over many, many, many years of perhaps contrary Al Jazeera, etc.? What is their perception of Jewish people and of Israel in general? Do you notice a change? Has it always been positive? Just, you want to comment just what's going on the streets as far as attitude towards Jewish people in Israel?
Right. So it has been mostly positive, if not completely positive. Many of them have also confided in me that they are so happy that finally their blindfolds have been removed from their eyes, and the words of incitement and the books that they were educated when they were young are no longer being taught in schools. And so they've been thrilled about that, to learn more about Israel, to learn more about Judaism. And many of them said, we are so happy that finally we are able to learn or to read about the true narrative of Israel and of the Jewish people. Many of them are fascinated to learn that Judaism and Islam are compatible almost 85% of our principles of faith, our belief in God, and out of the 13 principles of faith, the Shlosh Esrei Ikarim of Maimonides, One Muslim scholar, a dear friend of mine, mentioned to me, and we know that 11 are exactly the same. 11 of those 13 are exactly the same. The only thing that we differ is that the Jews, we have Moses as the highest prophet. Islam has Muhammad as the highest prophet. And we have the Torah as the ultimate religious document. They have the Quran as the ultimate religious document. All the other 11 are exactly the same. And so they're fascinated by that. And that has elicited really a lot of goodwill. That there is certainly a difference between Egypt and the UAE. First, in the population. The amount of the population, the economic status of the population. And in Egypt, you have the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood that has really serviced the poor population, and therefore they have indoctrinated them. Also, if I may say that the peace between Egypt and Israel is at the government level. It has not been permeated into the population in general. Though Israel, yes, but Egypt did not. And I think that because of the previous leadership in Egypt, that it wasn't their interest to maintain this dichotomy between peace and no peace with Israel, so they could secure their political position. That leadership has changed in Egypt, and I know personally from my conversation with President al-Sisi that he wants to change that, and he already began to change that. They have already changed their educational material. Israel no longer is a Zionist entity. Israel no longer is the enemy, and certainly the Jews are no longer depicted in books as the famous anti-Semitic, words that they used in Europe that they were using in Egypt also. So all of that has changed, and recently Egypt has changed all of that. So eventually, hopefully, that peace will trickle down top to bottom. In the UAE, the peace is not government to government only, it's people to people, institutions to institution, business to business. So it basically has permeated completely. It's not just the top, but it's the entire population exchange. And that has significantly made a difference in the perception of the locals towards Jews and towards Israel. And now that they have experienced that with us being there, many of the Emiratis come to my Sabbath services just because of curiosity. They want to know what we say, what we pray. And once they see what we pray, they say, this is very, very similar to what we pray in our mosque. They come to our holiday celebration, Pesach, Sukkot, Hanukkah, Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, you name it. Purim, they come and they listen. And I speak Arabic, so I'm able to even though English is not my mother tongue, I speak Arabic there, and English is basically a lingua franca there. But I communicate with the Emiratis in Arabic, and also with many of the Arabs from the Middle East that are also living in the UAE. Many of them are very fascinated by this. I tell you, I have personal dear friends of Muslims that came from the old Palestine before 1948, their children that they have lived either in Syria and some other countries. I have very dear Egyptian friends, Kuwaiti friends, and Bahraini friends, of course, and Saudi Arabian friends, that they all want to normalize relationships. They want to know more about Judaism. They want to know more about Israel, and they want to really live in peace and harmony.
Rebecca, you have to.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I have a quick statement to make and then a quick question. The statement is that, my husband and I just want to let everybody know, my husband and I went to visit Rabbi Abadie in the UAE. And I can tell you from personal experience that when we're walking down the street, and the rabbi took us everywhere to all the tourist hotspots and all the fun places, every single place we went, people walked, he walked around, he's a rabbi, he's got the kippah on his head and everything. They walk right over to him. They shake his hand. The Emiratis want to shake his hand. They want to take a picture with him. They want a blessing from him right there, standing in the street. They want to talk to him. They have to know who he is. And it's just, it's like we were walking around with a celebrity. It was just an amazing experience. And it was so wonderful. And we certainly did feel very, very safe in the streets, walking around openly as Jews. It was a wonderful feeling in a foreign country to feel that way. And so that leads me to my question, which, Rabbi, with the growing alliances with, Iran's neighbors, are you confident that the peace can hold with regard to how the UAE residents feel about the Jews, and also just about, in general? Do you think that the UAE will remain safe with the escalating tensions happening in the Middle East?
Yes, I'm confident that it will. Like I mentioned before, there are mutual interests that are necessary in that region to maintain kind of ceasefire or tranquility between both sides, between Iran and its proxies and between the UAE and the Gulf. And so it was necessary to have this agreement, in a sense, to stop any hostilities between them. Now, but also, as I mentioned, I think the vacuum that the United States created by not being involved there day to day, if not day to day, but actively involved, that might have led for a third party to come in and fill that vacuum. But I have no doubt and no question that the Gulf countries and the UAE in particular, based on my knowledge, again, I'm not a politician. I cannot say I'm speaking in the name of the UAE government, not at all. But based on my observation, my knowledge, and what I have heard, that will not change the Abraham Accord. Certainly not. There might be some public pronouncement or public actions that might frighten some of the people that care very much about the Abraham Accord, but I can tell you for sure that what's under the table, what's happening, that will not change whatsoever. There is a clear delineation of the UAE wanting to become a country that is free to worship any faith that a person wants, to conduct business freely, also to respect every other religion, ethnicity, or race of a person. So there will be peace amongst all the population. Don't forget, the UAE has a population from 204 countries. Many of them, they're not even members of the UN, that they live there, that they work there, and they participate in the development of the country. And so to maintain that peace and tranquility, there has to be respect amongst each other's population. And any population that will try to show any animosity or any hostilities towards another population, there are laws that prevent that. There are laws that carry a jail penalty or even a fine penalty, and so that is maintained. And I am sure that the Abraham Accords will continue as long as both sides agree to continue them, and don't do things that really will antagonize the other side.
Judy, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Could you tell us a little bit more about you're heading this community of Gulf Jewish communities in all these other countries, some who have not signed Abraham Accords. And also, there's an article I actually sent to you this morning in the Times of Israel about a woman with an organization, Shiraka, and participating in the March of the Living, and a great deal of information about the Holocaust and this move towards Iran, which held these Holocaust denial contests. Is there any, and we're always hearing the Iranian people actually are not, and now so much going on with another rebellion against the government. Is there any chance that the connection with Iran would actually work to soften some of this Holocaust denial when you have other Arab countries that are moving towards Iran who are trying to educate about the Holocaust, or is that unrealistically optimistic?
So I know Sharaka very, very well. I'm very close to them. I have been invited to participate in many of their events. I know Fatima personally, and it's an organization that's one of those organizations that is people-to-people organization between Israel and the Abraham Accord countries. Just people to people, so they could know each other, so they could help each other, so they could learn from each other. And that's exactly what Sharaka does, and they do it very, very well. So this visit to the March of Living is basically a recognition and acknowledgement that the Holocaust took place, that the Holocaust was the greatest tragedy in the history. That is something that the Arab countries are recognizing now one by one. Will that translate into Iran recognizing it? I don't think so, because Iran has its own ways and they have their own reason why they're not recognizing it. Although I am sure many of them, they believe that it did occur. It's just a political statement from their part. But it's really not important, tell you the truth, if they could convince Iran or not convince Iran. But this recognition of the Holocaust is, as I said, if every single Arab country, one by one, eventually they will recognize it and they will commemorate it. Iran may be left alone not doing so, but eventually they'll do so. It's not, I don't think it even should be in the highest priorities between the relationship of the UAE and the Iran is to get Iran to recognize the Holocaust. That's all, how shall I say, that's all talk that may not lead much anywhere. It's basically to maintain security, peace, and tranquility in the Gulf. That's what's most important, and stability.
Can you say the second part of Judy's question, or the first part, in terms of the other Gulf states, and especially those that don't, what's going on there on the ground? Can you give us a feel?
So 2 years ago, now 2 years and few months, just few months after I arrived, we started the Association of Gulf Jewish Communities. And that is basically an association to be able to serve the Jews living in other Gulf countries with Abraham Accords or without Abraham Accords. It is strictly a religious social organization, not a political organization. And basically, there are Jews in Oman, there are Jews in Kuwait, there are, of course, Jews in Bahrain. There's a nice small Jewish community in Bahrain, and there are Jews in Saudi Arabia. And of course, the UAE. Qatar has mostly Jewish servicemen from the US Air Force Base there. And so they need matzah for Pesach, they need shofar for Rosh Hashanah, they need Megillah reading. So we try to service them in that way possible. And we do hope that eventually all those countries will join the Abraham Accords, but of course that's not our purpose in that sense. But our purpose is basically to get the population to know about Jews and about Judaism, that on one hand is completely separate than the political entity of Israel as a state. Jewish as a religion, as a peoplehood. And so we want them to see that who we are, what we stand for, and also the compatibility between Islam and Judaism is great. So once they see that, they are all fascinated and they want to learn more. One of them, I remember, had mentioned to me, he says, we thought that Islam and Christianity are very close in their faith. He said, but now learning about Judaism, I mean, our sister religion is Judaism. We are so much alike. And that has caused a more of a rapprochement, more of an understanding, and more of a closeness between Jews and Muslims.
Other questions? Elliot?
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay, good. Let me tell you a little story about something that happened 50 years ago. Then I have a question about it. About 50 years ago, it was in the mid-70s. I was working on a deal in Israel I was a lawyer and I was working for some investment bankers in New York. We were going to do a deal with a securities offering for the Hebrew University, that was part of the Hebrew University, a part of their science stuff. We were going to form a corporation and do a public offering. When I was over in Israel working on this, I was working with people from Hebrew University, and I was standing on a street when walking somewhere, and a large limousine with black windows, you couldn't see in it, drove by. And the fellow from Hebrew University said to me, "Those are Saudi Arabians. They do a lot of business here." Now, I was shocked, and I knew nothing about it. And since then, I've never heard anything about any Saudis doing business in Israel. Was that unique, or did that exist? Does it still exist? Are there Saudis doing business in Israel now?
Well, let me tell you, I mean, for the surprise of many probably listening, Israel has had business, technological, strategic relationship with the UAE and Saudi Arabia for at least 15 to 20 years. Yes, it has been done. It has been done very quietly. It has been done in a way that it's not publicly recognizable. And of course, there's nothing to be surprised about. As I said, I have Saudi Arabian friends who they ask me if I know specifically Israeli businessmen or Israeli professionals that they want to work with. I said, I know many people in Israel and around the world. He said, no, we want specifically Israelis. So yes, that has been happening. Of course, it's not happening on a large scale, but it is happening. And has been happening, as I said, for 15, 20 years. And the difference is now the UAE now normalized it. It's now basically on the surface. Everybody can see it, can hear about it. And I'm sure there are many things that you can't see and can't hear either in the UAE and Israel. The same thing with Saudi Arabia. Yes, I'm not surprised at all about that. It is happening and it will continue to happen until one day that relationship with Saudi Arabia will surface and it will be known and public to everyone.
We have time for a few more questions if there are.
I have another question if nobody else is asking.
Judy?
Yeah, so I read recently that a stated goal of American policy is to normalize the agreement, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which had been on track until the Biden administration, when it seemed to fall off track for various reasons. Do you see this happening now? Do you think that that the administration has kind of readjusted and seeing this as a positive? Because it's been a very confusing. I know you don't like to comment because you're not a politician, but it has been very, very confusing, the messages that have gone out between the countries. And also with all the positives in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, do they write about the Palestinian issue a great deal? I mean, do they write about the terrorism or the celebration, the martyrdom, or are those moral issues never addressed? Are they overlooked? It's something that really fascinates me.
All right, so let me first try to deal with the first part of your question, and then if I don't deal with the second part, please remind me. The first part is there's no question in my mind that the United States government is distracted somewhere else to focus in the Gulf. And that has definitely led to not the thawing, but the slowing process of the Abraham Accord with other Gulf countries. The US is busy with the Ukrainian war. It's busy with the South Asian, seas and what's happening there with China, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, that is not focusing in the Gulf. And that's, to my humble opinion, it's a great mistake, because I think the Ukrainian war and the China theater is not going to lead to any immediate benefit, where focusing in the Gulf will lead to more of an immediate benefit and tangible benefits. Unfortunately, the present administration, and I'm going to have to repeat my disclaimer that I'm not a politician, but from what I see and what I read, the present administration has made several faux pas with the Gulf and specifically with Saudi Arabia. And those faux pas, unfortunately, have slowed down that relationship and have slowed down that process. Sometimes I find the US administration, and not specifically this one, throughout the ages, they get stuck in one issue and they don't see the bigger picture in the region. And then they go straight to that issue, and in 10 or 20 years, we realize the mistakes that focusing on that issue created. Either created wars or created dictators that are tyrants, or created distancing of countries, or created other countries going to a different world power for help and assistance. And I think that's what's happening nowadays in the Gulf, that the US administration is not focusing there, it's focusing somewhere else. And therefore, they left a great vacuum. And that vacuum has slowed down the process and also has invited other powers to meddle in that region. And that's, I think, it's a grave mistake, not just a great, but a grave mistake for the future of that entire region. Unless this administration picks up and does something, or the next administration, things might change there vis-a-vis the United States that may not be reparable. I mean, if I may say, the same mistake was done in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution at that time. That, look, it's already 40 years, more than that, that the entire region suffers from it, and the United States and the world suffers from it because of that one issue mistake. So unfortunately, it happens with many US administrations, and it's happening with this one also. Now, the second part, what was it, if you remind me?
About the Palestinian Palestinian issue, if it's discussed, and some of the details of that.
Right. So of course, terrorism is not something the UAE supports. In fact, the UAE denounced that. Many countries of the Gulf will denounce terrorism. They will denounce martyrdom. They will denounce hostilities, though they do want to see a just solution for that problem between Israel and its Arab and Palestinian population. They want to see a solution, but they're not holding, so that solution is no longer holding hostage relationship between Arab countries and Israel, where for 70 years it had. For 70 years, many of them felt they were being held hostage, so to speak, to that resolution. Once that door or that ice was broken under the Trump administration, and the understanding that there could be peace without that issue being resolved, and that issue eventually will be resolved, maybe even better if all the other countries have a relationship with Israel. And so that paradigm has definitely changed. It was a paradigm shift between the old narrative that you need to resolve that issue before resolving any other issue of any other Arab country, to the reverse. No, first resolve all the Arab countries, and at the end, or in the middle, somewhere in between that process, maybe we could resolve the Israeli-Palestinian, Arab-Palestinian issue. And so on one hand, they denounce terrorism, they denounce martyrdom, they denounce what, attack to civilian population from Gaza, from anywhere. But on the other hand, also they would like to see, and anyone I think would want to see a peaceful resolution to the Israel and the Arab-Palestinian population.
Alicia, did you have a question?
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, is this Odette?
Yes, it's Odette. Yes.
Okay.
Is
Yeah,
there
she-
time? Hi,
Yeah,
Shalom,
go ahead.
Rabbi.
By
Yeah.
the way, Odette's joining us from Western Canada, Edmonton, Canada. So
No, I'm in Toronto now.
even
I
better.
was. I lived where Rabbi Irwin is.
Okay.
Okay, Shalom. Nice to see everyone. I just to introduce myself, where we live in Canada now, but I have lived in Israel. I grew up in Baghdad, Iraq, for the first 20 years of my life. And then we made it to Israel through the borders. As Rabbi Abadie is probably very familiar with these stories, and lived in Israel. And now we are living, well, the last 50 years, we're living in Canada. I do follow, obviously, Israel news. I follow the history of all the Jews, everywhere. But I have followed very closely, obviously, how the Jews in the Middle East, as most of us are aware, have lived, but also how they were exiled, nearly 1 million of them. Now, so this is where the question is, as we are very positive about the Abrahamic Accord, and especially that they have honored the Holocaust, they have commemorated, I've heard it online many times, they are very aware, it's very important that they are very aware of that history. How does the other history fits in? Because some of these Arab countries, even though they could be friendly, but they're not aware of the other Jews that came from the Middle East. And should that not be included in everywhere, not just in the culture, but in everywhere there, for all the good relationship that Rabbi Abadie has mentioned, I think it will just cement it more. Some of the young people, it only happened, like we only left 50 years ago. So in terms of history, that's very short time. But the young Muslims or the young Arabs, if you want to say, all over the Middle East are not aware of that history. They are aware of, unfortunately, the Palestinian conflict. And I feel if they are aware of that history as well, whether it's positive or negative, we cannot change it. It's there and it should be honored.
Absolutely. Odette, are you from Egypt?
I am from Baghdad, Iraq.
From Baghdad, Iraq. Okay,
Yeah.
very well. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, ahlan wa sahlan. Yeah.
Ahlan wa sahlan biki.
Yeah.
So one of my other hats that I wear is president of JJAC, Justice for Jews from Arab Countries. That's JJAC. For the last 20 years, I have been speaking together with my colleagues in that organization about the right of the Jews from Arab countries that were expelled, persecuted, killed, and taken all their properties from many of those 10 Arab countries that basically expel them at the heels of the establishment of the State of Israel. Coming up next month is the Farhud Day in June, as you very well know. We have commemorated in the past and will commemorate it this year also. In fact, we had declared maybe almost less than 10 years ago an International Farhud Day at the United Nations as part of my organization. So anywhere and anytime, when I speak, I always bring the issue of the Jewish refugees from Arab countries. That is on the table and has always been on the table. We have helped pass a House resolution in the United States that whenever the US speaks about Palestinian Arab refugees, they must speak about Jewish refugees from Arab countries. That's Resolution 185 of the House of Representatives of the United States. We helped pass 2 laws in the Knesset in Israel. One of them is also the same thing, that whenever Israel deals in any peace conference or in any peace negotiation with the Arab Palestinian or with the Arab countries, the issue of Jewish refugees from Arab countries has to be mentioned. And also the second law that the Knesset passed almost 10 years ago is the recognition that November 30th is the Yom HaPlitim, the Day of the Jewish Refugees of Arab countries. So that certainly is on the table. And whenever I have the opportunity, I speak about it. My own parents were refugees. I was a refugee myself, from my parents from Syria. I am from Lebanon. And that's part of who I am, and that's part of what I am. And so there's no question that that teaching I have tried to impart in the Emirates. Many of my Emirati friends or Arab friends from other countries have heard my story, and they have been fascinated and felt so sorry about it, that indeed that happened. Many of them, they do tell me they remember their parents had best friends, their neighbors were Jews, either in Lebanon or in Syria or in Egypt or in Iraq. Many of them have confessed to me how bad they feel that happened. And look, they said, look at our countries, what's left of them. When the Jews were there, there was culture, there was business, there was friendship. Life was completely different. So indeed, that topic is very, very important. And it's incumbent upon all of us, Jews from the Middle East and Jews from anywhere in the world, to bring that topic to the table, and whenever they discuss Jewish issues or any refugee issues. But that's very correct. I have given lectures and lectures upon that at the United Nations, at many Jewish organizations, at universities, and certainly I will continue to do so, and all of us should continue to do so. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We have one more question before we wrap up. And Alicia, I know you've been very patient, so I want to give you the opportunity to ask your question.
I'll be really quick. First of all, it's really great to see you. And thank you for all the important work you're doing. Sometimes I get afraid that it's a very fragile relationship, but not only, as you mentioned, business relationships, but also I think what you're doing, that personal, person to person and education. So thank you for that. And then my simple question is just if you have any thoughts on if you think other countries will be joining the Accords, and if you have any thoughts, as you said, you're in touch with a lot of other places, any thoughts on that? I know you're not exactly, like you said, a politician or whatever, but if you have any inclinations, and if it's dependent maybe on what happens here, or, in terms of politics as well.
Thank you, Alicia. It's so nice to see you too. It has been a long time since we spoke. Good to see you. Happy to see you.
I hope to come visit. We all should.
Yes, I would love to show you around. Would love to show you around. So a few things. So first, yes, I'm not a politician. No, I am a diplomat, but being a diplomat is different than being a politician. So that's how we know how to maneuver certain topics. Secondly, what was the second point I wanted to mention is that look. It all depends, as I said, on how much the United States government will be hands-on in the region. In a sense, the Accords are there. They're marching. They could be marched at a faster pace and a more decisive pace, or they could march at the natural pace of life, which usually is slow when it comes to issues like that. It really all depends on the United States. And I cannot but emphasize that. If we can bring to the attention of the US government, the present US government, that it's imperative, that it's in the national security interest of the United States to push those accords, to support them, to embrace them. That's what's going to get many other countries around. I'll tell you again, from what I hear around me and from my observation, is that many countries are waiting for that to do something. And many of them feel that, look what happened. The UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco did it, and then the US pulled back. And so they're afraid to make that jump and says, and now we're going to be bereft again of U.S. support and U.S. involvement. And so that's what I think many countries are waiting for. And that vacuum, again, I cannot but emphasize, it has invited other powers into the region. And that does not bode very well for the region. The U.S. government must be involved and supportive, actively supportive and involved. We are a big country. The U.S. is a very large country. I cannot believe that they don't have enough diplomats or enough people in the State Department that they can only focus on one area of the globe, or two areas. They cannot focus on three. I mean, if we're speaking about focusing, the U.S. has also completely forgot about South America and the infiltration of Iran and many other terrorist groups it's active, and it's taking place in South America. And again, the United States is sleeping in that part of the world. And so, very important. Countries, I know they are waiting for that involvement so they could take that step. They need to take that step and know that they're safe and they're secure and they're going to be bolstered and they're going to be supported in that sense. Otherwise, they're afraid to dip their feet, so to speak, in the cold water. They need to have some warmer waters there to be able to do it. I hope I answered all your questions. Anything else?
So I just want to say again, thank you so much, Rabbi Abadie, for joining us and sharing your insights, and especially giving us a little bit of a feel of what's going on the ground there. It's so encouraging to hear the progress that has been made in a short amount of time, and it leaves me somewhat hopeful for the future. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you everyone for your questions. I hope to see you again sometime very soon.
Thank you very much. And Judith and whoever is going with you to that area, please enjoy it. Take as much as you can. Hear the people, speak with them. And I'm sorry I'm not there to welcome you personally, but hopefully in the future. I want to say one more thing, and I think it was for Alicia. Basically, I'll be very honest that my greatest satisfaction, and I have to be honest here, my greatest satisfaction being there is not leading the Jewish community, believe it or not, is not having an extra kosher restaurant or an extra place of worship. Yes, that's important. But my greatest satisfaction, and I think my greatest achievement, if I may say so, is those interpersonal relationships that I had first with government officials, with the Emirati society, and also with the rest of the expat population, specifically from Arab countries. That is my greatest satisfaction, and I think that is my greatest apportation, if I may, to that region, and specifically with some of the other Gulf countries. The Jewish communities, we are a resilient people. With rabbi, without rabbi, we can forge ahead. We'll create our own, places of worship. The famous deserted island. You'll have one Jews, two synagogues. You'll have that there, and you have it in Dubai. So, yes, I'm happy about that. I'm proud of that, but I'm much more proud and happier and more satisfied about the part that I was really involved in those interpersonal relationships. Bringing forth the knowledge of Judaism, the knowledge of Israel to the government, to the people, and to the population. That is, I think, what I'm most happy about.